And now, please join us as Pastor George Negrete brings us today's message.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome to Bethel Church. This is your first time with us today. We're so glad that you've chosen to be with us today. Also want to congratulate those who are baptized today. Congratulations on the great decision that you've made to be baptized. Also, go ahead. It's good. It is a great decision. And I also want to thank our veterans again. Thank you so much for your service and your sacrifice, fighting for our freedom. Well, currently we are in a series entitled FaithWalk. And I want to review last week, Dr. Beals was with us and talked about the 8th commandment, that thou shalt not steal. Just a couple points from his sermon last week was, the first one is that we were to pursue contentment. That whatever season we were in, whether it was want or plenty, just to be grateful for what God has given us and to be content. We also learned that we were to guard against greed in our life. Our nature is to want more for more's sake. So we need to guard against that and be sensitive to when that's happening. And thirdly, we learned that God fills an open hand, that we are to be generous and allow Him to fill that. Because we learned also that there were two things that God would not do. He wouldn't fill a clenched fist. That if we keep things close with a clenched fist and think that that's ours because we earned it and it's not for God to tell us what to do with it, He can't refill it. And also we learned that God will not lie. And so that leads us into this week's message, which is talking in the next commandment, that thou shalt not lie. So let's look at Exodus chapter 20, verse 16, as we start today's message. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. So why is lying wrong? Is lying wrong simply because God says that it's wrong, or is it wrong because it inherently is wrong? Well, I'd say that it's both. It's both. And here's a few reasons why lying is both wrong, because God said it is and because it's inherently wrong. Firstly, lying negatively affects our relationship with God. Listen to what Proverbs says about lying and our relationship with God. It says, the Lord detests lying lips, but He delights in men who are truthful. Detests. He's unable to bear it. Lying separates us from God. Let's look at what Proverbs 6 says about lying. It says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to Him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a man who stirs up dissension among his brothers. 2 times it talks about how we are not supposed to lie. We also have to look at who God is. God has described Himself as the truth. It says in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He is truth. And referring back to Proverbs 6, very seldom does a writer in Scriptures call something disgusting, let alone disgusting to the Lord. But this verse says that lying lips are disgusting to the Lord. It turns the stomach of God, but honesty is something that God delights in. If we have any intention of pleasing God with our lives, if we want His blessing to be on our lives, being truthful and being a truthful person is part of that, because God is truth. And therefore, untruth or dishonesty is the opposite of who He is. Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus is proclaiming to be the truth. When we lie, we put ourselves in the direct opposition of who God is. And we're saying when we lie, I can do it my way, and I can do it on my own. We lie because we believe the end result justifies our actions. We believe the truth is not the way to success. We forget that God is always there, and God provides. And by following His commands, we will have what we need. But we forget this. And when you forget God, you trust only in yourself. The reason we lie is because we try to get on our own what God can provide. But lying ends up being unprofitable. Another reason that lying is wrong is because it negatively affects my relationship with others. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 16, it says that you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. One of the first times we hear neighbor in those commands. And so it negatively affects the people that are around us. So who is our neighbor? Our neighbor are people who live next door to us. How about people that we're in a relationship with, whether that's our spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend? It could be a coworker, an employee, an employer, clients. It could even be adversaries or enemies. Think of the story of the Good Samaritan. Telling the truth and lying can greatly impact our relationships. Think about a wedge. A wedge is the shape of a triangle. Think about that in your mind as I talk about this. The pointy end is when you have the opportunity to either tell the truth or to lie. And if you choose to be truthful, you will go up on that wedge and you will improve your relationship. Or if you choose to lie and not tell the truth, it will be like going downward in that wedge, and it will negatively affect your relationship because it's destructive when we lie in our relationships. Lying takes on many different forms. It can be like perjury in a courtroom, saying something that's not true. It could be a half-truth, a little white lie, a sort of true. It could be breaking a vow, making a promise that you do not intend to keep, or blame shifting, pointing to others for the mistake that you know that they did not do, or making up excuses rather than owning your own mistake. Or it can be flattery, saying something that's not true about something because you hope to profit from the relationship. The forms of lying vary, but the effect is the same. Lying is deceptive. It's a misrepresentation of the truth. And that leads to misunderstandings, which will lead to disappointments, which will lead to loss, which will lead to destruction. The greatest way to destroy a relationship is to lie to them. Have you ever had anybody betray you, or to deceive you, or to break a confidence in you? There's something about lying that cuts to the very foundation of a relationship because it's destructive. It's destructive. Relationships, family, and society depend upon honesty to function. Imagine a large commercial airplane like a 747. It's built with many pieces of metal, all held together with rivets and bolts. What would happen if one of the passengers on that airplane were to start removing the bolts one at a time while the airplane was in flight? That plane would fall apart. Every relationship, family, and community is like an airplane. It's made up of a number of persons bound together by trust and truth. If no one told the truth, there would be no confidence in each other and nothing to hold them together. And what employees want most in a relationship with an employer is honesty. They say, I want to work for an honest woman or an honest man, someone who will deal with me truthfully. Employers who are looking to hire someone, they look for honesty. I just want honest employees, people who will speak and do truthful things. Those who are dating, what do they want most from the significant other? They want them to be truthful with them. It's the foundation on which to build their relationship. Married people, what do they value or resent most in their marriage? Honesty or the lack of it. Truth builds relationship and deception tears it apart. Despite how much we try and rationalize our lives, deep down and inside we know the value of truth and the price of lies. The answer to the question, is lying wrong because God said it is, or is it wrong because it's inherently wrong, is that it's both. It's both. Proverbs 15:4 says, the tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceptive tongue crushes the spirit. Lying breaks the hearts and the spirits of people and negatively affects our relationships. Since we know that lying negatively impacts our relationship with God and relationships with people, let's discover what the 9th commandment is teaching us about truthfulness. So let's read it one more time. Exodus chapter 20, verse 16. It says, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. This commandment is prohibiting something in our life. It's also implying that it's mandating something in our life. And it's also telling us that there are some blessings that will follow when we follow through on it. So let's look at what it prohibits, what it mandates, and what blessings will come along with it when we obey. What it prohibits. Well, firstly, it prohibits telling lies. You know something's not true, but you say it anyways. In the Old Testament, Abraham tells his wife Sarah to lie to the Egyptians. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 13, it says, say you are my sister. Now Sarah was his wife. Say you're my sister so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. He lied. And then later on with Jacob, Jacob lies to his father Isaac about being his brother Esau so that he could steal Esau's blessing. In Genesis 27, verse 35, it says, but he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Jacob took his brother's blessing. Why did they lie? Both Abraham and Jacob lied because they had something to gain or they were trying to preserve their life. Profit and self-preservation. Sometimes we lie about ourselves. Maybe we lied about ourselves on social media, and we figure that's okay because it's not really real, but it is. It's a reflection of who you are. Maybe we've lied on our resumes about who we are so that we can get the job. That's not right. We need to be truthful and trust God that He will open that door for us. Another thing this commandment prohibits is saying something false about another person. Satan was the first person to tell a lie about somebody else in the Bible. He told that lie about God. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 and in verse 4, it says, he said to the woman, did God really say that you must not eat from any tree in the garden? You will not surely die. The serpent said to the woman. Satan twisted the truth. Why? Out of spite for who God is. He lied to Eve about God and what God really said. His lie led to the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. When we say something false about another person, that's lying. And that's what this commandment is prohibiting. Out of revenge or spite for a person, sometimes we're tempted to tell a lie to hurt that person's reputation or to deceive that person's direction. A teacher who did not give us the grade we wanted on a test, we might spread lies about them, or we're tempted to. An old boyfriend or an old girlfriend or an ex-spouse desired to hurt them, so we tell lies about them. The fact that we are no longer in a relationship or things didn't go in the way that we wanted them to in that relationship does not give us the freedom to tell lies about people. The harm actually comes back to hurt us. Satan, when he told that lie about God, actually came back to hurt him. He was cursed by God. Another thing this commandment prohibits is blaming others for actions they did not commit. When you blame others for something that you did or you know somebody else did. Adam, when he was confronted by God about his sin, blames Eve and God for his decision. Look at what it says in Genesis chapter 3, verse 12. It says, the man said, the woman, first he's blaming the woman, and then he says, you put here with me. Now he's blaming God for his sin. She gave me the fruit, and I ate it. Blaming others for his own actions. If you did something wrong, or you didn't see something through and didn't follow through on a promise, be truthful about it. Be honest. Another thing that this commandment prohibits in our lives is spreading slander or gossip. Slander is saying something false about another person with the goal of damaging their reputation. Slander's mean, it's hurtful, and it's wrong. Ephesians 4:31 and 32 says, get rid of all bitterness, all rage, anger, brawling, and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another. It's commanding us to get rid of slander in our life because slander can ruin your neighbor's reputation and yours. And it's impossible to take back the slander after it has been said. There's a story that I found about a woman who had freely spread slander and scandal amongst her friends in her small town. And she wanted to confess to the priest in her town what she had done. So he gave her a ripe thistle top and told her to go to the various directions and to scatter those seeds. One by one, wondering what was going to come of this, she obeyed, and then she returned and told him that she had completed it. To her amazement, he told her to go back and to gather up all of those scattered seeds. When she objected that it would be impossible, he said that it would be even more impossible to gather up all of the evil things that she had said and circulated about other people. You see, any child can scatter seeds, but even the wisest and the strongest can't gather them again. It also prohibits us from gossiping. That's talking about people with no concern for what the truth is. Some people love to gossip, others just happen upon it. But Proverbs tells us that gossip is very tempting. Look at what it says in Proverbs 26:22. The words of gossip are like choice morsels. In other words, it's delicious and it's tempting. And it goes down to a man's inmost parts. Even though it's tempting, we must resist it. We must not join in on it because it's not seeking what the truth is. We need to resist jumping to conclusions and seek the facts. There's a story in the Old Testament where Eli the priest jumped to a conclusion about Hannah. Hannah was a wife who was not able to bear children. Her story is recorded in 1 Samuel. She goes up to the house of God to offer a sacrifice and to pray that God would bless her with a child. As you can imagine, this is a deeply emotional prayer. She prays there at the house of God and she begins to weep. She's praying so emotionally that no words are coming out of her mouth, but her lips are moving. Eli, who is the priest at the time, sees all of this. Does he go up to her and pray for her? Does he ask her what's wrong? Does he go to her husband and ask him what's going on? All no. He jumps to a conclusion that she's a drunkard. Listen to what he says in 1 Samuel 1. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long will you keep on getting drunk? Get rid of your wine." I imagine that Eli wishes he could take back his response instead of jumping to that conclusion. So we shouldn't jump to those conclusions either. When we hear people gossiping about another person, we need to understand that that's wrong. When you talk about another person without knowing what the truth is, that's wrong. You always have a choice when you listen to gossip about another person, either to stop that conversation or to fuel it on. Look at what Proverbs says in 26:20. Without wood, a fire goes out. Without gossip, a quarrel dies down. In other words, you carry around with you a bucket of water or gas. You can either throw gas on the gossip, which will fuel it on, or you can throw water on it and you can put it out. You see, gossip is a lot like a tube of toothpaste. Let me show you what I mean. Let's see, I need a volunteer. You want to help me? Come on up. Look like a strong guy. Thanks for being a good sport. You're surprised right now, right?
A little bit.
Well, you look strong. I want you to do something for me. I want you to squeeze all of this toothpaste out onto that plate as fast as you can. Man, you got it all out. No toothpaste goes to waste in your house. That's good. Good job. Awesome. Good job. Well, you're not done yet. Now I want you to put it all back in.
That's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. All right. All right. Thanks for being a good sport. You know, the last time when Pastor Brett was here, he asked a volunteer to come up. He gave him $20. So I don't want you to leave empty-handed. So I got something for you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for being a good sport. Gossip is like toothpaste. We can squeeze it all out pretty easily and quickly, but it's nearly impossible to put it back in the tube. It's nearly impossible to bring that gossip back and the harm that it puts into other people's lives and the reputation that it brings to our life about being someone who spreads gossip. So in review, what does this commandment prohibit us from doing? 1, telling lies. 2, spreading false things about other people or blaming others for things that they didn't do, and from spreading slander and gossip. Now, this commandment does not only prohibit us from something, but it's also mandating us to do something. The first thing that it's mandating us to do is to be fearlessly truthful. We need to be fearlessly truthful. It will cost you sometimes to tell the truth. Why do we lie? Because we think that we have something to lose. Proposals, or maybe we're turning in a resume, maybe we're starting a new relationship, and so we lie. We think that we can get some money or some power or fame. Why do we tell the truth? We know that we have something even greater to gain: credibility, trust, and opportunity. My son Gabriel, when he was in the 8th grade, was playing basketball at a friend's house one night. The basketball bounced off the hoop and hit a neighbor's garage door, smashing the decorative glass in the large door. The neighbors weren't home at the time. Gabriel and his friends waited for the neighbors to return home and informed them about the damage, and they took responsibility for fixing it. They called several repairmen and scheduled the repair as soon as possible. Later, my son Gabriel told us, I was the one who shot the ball that broke the glass. I should be the one to pay for the repair. And he did. And God provided a way for him to pay for that repair bill by selling candy. The boys gained the respect of the neighbors and of their parents. Gabriel gained a lot of trust from his parents because he owned the responsibility. God provided a way for him to resolve that situation. Now, the boys could have run, they could have hid and hoped that nobody saw. They could have all blamed each other in hopes that no one would be held responsible. But though it cost them money, they were honest. They were fearlessly truthful. And this commandment mandates that we be fearlessly truthful in our life, though it costs us something. In a marriage, be truthful. Did you make a mistake? Be honest. Did you fail to follow through on a promise? Be truthful about it. In our jobs and in our businesses, are you going to miss a deadline? Be upfront about it. Don't blame others. Don't make excuses. Did you cause an accident? Confess to it and leave your number there on the car that you hit or the property that you may have caused damage to. Are you honest when you file your taxes each year? Are you in a new relationship? Be yourself. Be truthful and don't fear the consequences. Be fearlessly truthful. This commandment also mandates that we stand up for others. When you know the truth will vindicate somebody, that will stop the gossip, that will stop and rebuke the slander, you're prohibited from staying silent. Many of the laws of witnesses were originally initiated to protect the poor and the vulnerable from the rich and the powerful who would try to do evil. When others are injured by lies, we're mandated to not stand by silently when they're wrongly accused. They're not to allow others who can't defend themselves to be overpowered by lies or those seeking to harm them. There's a TV show entitled, What Would You Do?, hosted by John Quinones. This is a show that I love and I hate to watch. I love it because it shows that when they set up secret cameras around in public places and they show somebody being treated unfairly, they shows that there are still people who will stand up for others who cannot stand up for themselves. I hate it because I always hope that I'm never on the other side of those secret cameras. Staying silent when you know the truth is just as wrong as saying a lie. The passage in Exodus about giving false testimony about your neighbor has the context of a courtroom. In a courtroom, when someone is falsely accused, we can't stay silent. This 9th commandment is mandating us to stand up and to speak the truth. Don't be concerned with the consequences of telling the truth, but rather with doing nothing and allowing injustice to continue. Secondly, this commandment mandates that we pursue truth. Know the truth. Seek it. Let your life be characterized by it. Don't speak lies against your neighbor. Seek to be a truthful person. The Bible says that the devil is the father of lies. In John chapter 8, verse 44, it says, you belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. When we lie, we reject the truth. We're following the wrong path. In contrast, when we pursue honesty, truthfulness, we follow in God's path. Here's a scripture that we read earlier. In John 14:6, it says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus is truth. When we pursue truth, we develop the character of God in our hearts and in our lives. With all of the commands, there is a blessing that follows obedience. Now, I want to share with you the blessings that follow being truthful. First of all, it builds your reputation. In your business dealings, you'll be known as a person who is honest. In your network of peers, you'll be known as an honest and trustworthy person. In your community, wherever you volunteer and serve, you'll be known as a person who is trustworthy and honest. It will build that reputation. It will also build your character. In your relationships, your marriage can have greater intimacy because you are honest and trustworthy. In a parent-child relationship, there's greater trust. In your work, you'll be characterized and known as a trusted employee. And in your relationship with God, when you're truthful with your life, it builds the character of God in your life. Tonight, at home groups, we're going to be learning more about this point, about developing God's character in your life by pursuing truth. I sure hope that you'll make it a point to be at a home group tonight. And another blessing of being truthful and following through on this commandment is that it enriches your life. In Psalm 34, verse 12, it says, "Whoever loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking lies." You will see many good days. Your life will be enriched. Well, what do you do if you have lied? What do you do if you have been dishonest? Start by being a truthful person today. The amazing thing that we find in Scripture is that in spite of the unfaithfulness of His people, God remains faithful to His covenant promise. Even when we break His commands, God is merciful. He said to Moses, "The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin." He is a forgiving God. Commands may be broken, but God is forgiving. Be truthful with God. Confess to Him about your dishonesty. He will forgive you. Ask Him to help you to trust in Him so that you can put Him as number one in your life. I came upon a great quote this last week by a guy named H.L. Allison. He said that our lies mostly come from our fearing man more than God. Well, if we don't have God first in our life, then we might be tempted to lie. But if we put Him first, then we will resist lying because we know that He provides all in our life. And let's do the same. Be truthful in our relationships. If we haven't been honest in those relationships, let's confess and ask forgiveness in those relationships. If somebody comes to you today and says that they are sorry, they were motivated perhaps by today's message, I encourage you, be forgiving. Start to allow that character of God to grow in you as well, the character trait of being forgiving. And then allow God's truthfulness to grow in your life. When you do these things, it will build credibility with others. It will make integrity possible. It will strengthen your marriage. Your children will respect you because of your honesty. You will be able to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you've been honest. And most importantly, being a truthful person pleases God. It pleases God. I want to thank you today for being with us as we've studied the 9th commandment today, that thou shalt not speak false testimony against your neighbor. We're going to continue this series next week as we finish out the 10 Commandment series. As our